Hello everyone! Today I just want to go over the very basics of shipbuilding in case you're a new player and you're just getting started in Star Trek Online, because the game can be relatively confusing for a new player. So, first of all, if you look at my UI and it looks different than yours, if you press escape, there is like a rearrange HUD button, and then you can drag around all of the interface things however you want. Also, your tray, there is a button here where you can select how many trays that you want displayed at a time. You can also like scroll here through like the different quick bars, and if you go here to rearrange HUDs, like the bridge crew window, you can drag that around and you can also make it bigger. So you can change the shape of that or can make it wider so you have all of those in a line. You can also drag those abilities on your tray if you want, or you can have them like this. So this is up to you. Now, if you press P, you get a window with all of your skills and stuff that you can track on your quick bar. There you find all of your captain abilities, console abilities, everything that you could use there. So there is that. This is also where you could lock your tray. If your tray is locked, obviously you can't drag abilities around any longer. Now, one of the most important parts when you get a new starship is the power window here, right? But my UI, this is here on the left, but as I said, you can drag this around as you want. And usually as a new player, you probably want to use the attack preset. The attack preset essentially gives you 100 in weapon power and then 50 in shield, 25 in engines and auxiliary. Now, as you get more familiar with the game, you might want to have your own layouts, and there is a button up here where you can change how this is displayed, and then you can lock different settings, you can drag them around, you can save settings here and so on. But for the most part, when you just get started, just put everything in weapon power and you should be fine. And then once you get more familiar with it, or you have a specific build that requires different power settings, you can change them as you want. Now, your weapon power affects energy weapons, and it does not affect projectile weapons, but most builds just use a lot of energy weapons anyway, and it's very Star Trek-y to have those energy weapons. Which brings us to your weapons. You have fore weapons and you have aft weapons. So there are generally two sort of philosophies, or two ways I say how to build your ship. One is forward facing and one is broadside, right? Forward facing means you want all of your weapons or your main firepower to shoot in front of you. Of course, weapons do have firing arcs, right? When I hover over this gun, you can see now displayed the firing arc. So I can only shoot on ships that are within this arc. That means I have like dual beam banks in the front, which cover a forward arc combined with a torpedo, and then I have like omni beams in the back, which also can shoot forward because they have a 360-degree angle. Now, there is a limit on how many omni beams you can equip, but it's essentially one set omni beam, one normal omni beam, and the kinetic cutting beam is a special thing from the reputation, right? So there is that. So a 5-3 layout is very good for forward-facing builds. You could also be using cannons instead, and then you would have turrets in the back. Now, speaking of beams and cannons, usually you want to focus on one of those. You want to use either cannons or beams. You can mix them if you have like, well, mix them. You have a skill called Mixed Armament Synergies, which is a miracle worker skill. So in specialized cases, you might want to use beams with one turret in the back or something a little bit different. But basically, in most cases, you don't want to mix beams and cannons. And the reason for that is simple, because bridge officer powers, a little bit more on that later, but for example, this is a beam skill, fire at will, and it only affects beams. So if you were to run beams and cannons combined, you would need to run a skill to buff your cannons as well, and that would use more bridge officer slots, and there's a limit on how many you have, right? Now, the other thing that you want to do is you want to limit yourselves to one energy damage type. So on this build I have used plasma. You can see those are all plasmas. Those are simulated plasma beams, but the important part is they do plasma damage, and you can see that right here on the screen where it says plasma damage. Now, if you're running all like plasma beams, you want to boost plasma damage as much as you can, and I have what are called isomag consoles here with the plasma modifier, and as you can see they increase plasma energy weapon damage. Plasma, you have to be a bit careful because there are like plasma torpedoes also. But as you can see, those isomags also come with other mods. Here is one that increases the turn rate, simply because I like to turn a bit more, but I have 5 isomags that increase my plasma energy damage, and then the turn is just personal preference. I could even slot more plasma isomags. Those stack, right? And that's the key point. You want to use one energy type, and you want to stack as many damage bonuses as you can to that energy type, and then you want to use skills to boost that weapon type. And the torpedo is, well, a torpedo is very Star Trek-y, I suppose, but also torpedoes do quite a lot of damage against the hull, and it turns out to be a very useful way of building your ship to have like mostly energy weapons and then slot one torpedo onto. So I also have a skill for that one torpedo, but I don't really have any gear that really increases torpedoes, right? You focus on your energy weapons, your mostly energy weapons, and you just slot on that one torpedo. And that seems to work relatively fine. Now, a different way of building, as I've said earlier, would be broadside. Now, broadside means you would have just beam arrays everywhere, possibly with one torpedo as well, because as I've said, a torpedo just is very useful against hulls. The problem is, right, normal beams have a 270-degree arc. So the key to beams is that your rear beams and your forward beams can shoot the same target if the target is towards the side of you. The problem is the torpedo. The torpedo has a forward arc, so you have to like turn the nose of your ship towards the enemy to fire a torpedo and then turn back to fire all of your beams. It can be a bit awkward. There are a few torpedoes in this game who are wide angle, who have, I think, 180-degree firing arc, so those go well with a broadside beam if you have one of those. But for the most part, you're going to be fine with just turning your nose now and then, and you'd still have, well, everything else like just filled with beam arrays. So those are, I guess, the two main options on how to build your weapons. There are obviously specialized builds. There are builds that use entirely torpedoes and mines. There are science builds that are mostly focused on exotic particle generators, where the weapons are more of an afterthought. They often go with like torpedoes and so on. But, you know, just for the basics, if you just run weapon power, focus on one damage type, and focus on one weapon type, sort of, with the torpedo mixed in, you will already do pretty well. Now, as a note here, I've briefly touched on the isomags that I'm running here. You probably don't have those because those are crafted, or you can buy them in exchange. But when you're starting out, you are just going to fill your tactical consoles with regular damage increase consoles, right? So there would be ones, in my case, that increase plasma damage, and you would just use those. Now, here I have an example. Those are just white Mark 12 consoles, and as you can see, they only increase plasma energy weapon damage by 24%, while my Mark 15, their isomags, increase them by 37.5%. But obviously, you can upgrade those normal consoles there. You can upgrade the rarity, and you can also upgrade them to Mark 15 and so on. But as you are leveling, right, you won't have like isomags. You will probably slot those normal tactical consoles, so you will fill your tactical consoles with just whatever buffs your energy type, and then you will try to stick to one energy type in your build. And I mean, once you reach maximum level, you can then consider what exactly you want to use as weapons and what ship you want to use, right? While you're leveling, you probably don't know in what ship you'll end up in the end. Now, I've talked a lot about improving your damage and essentially consoles that improve your damage. Now I should talk a little bit about the actual console slots, right? As you can see, there are tactical, science, engineering, and universal console slots. And there are also tactical, science, engineering, and universal consoles. The most important part to note is that a universal console can go into any slot, and a universal slot can hold any console. So universal consoles don't have to go in universal slots. Actually, most ships don't have universal console slots until they are tier 6 and upgraded. So you can sort of ignore those, and if you have a universal console, you can slot that anywhere. Now, a lot of popular universal consoles are like from the Reputation or from the lobby set or from ships, like a lot of C-store ships or even event ships or so on come with their own consoles, like the Fleet Power Network Array is a very popular one, but you don't have to worry about this while you are leveling. And you don't have to worry too much about engineering and science consoles or anything like that. Just fill your tactical slots maybe with damage improving consoles. Stick to an energy type. And this is good enough. This will get you easily through the game till the end game. And then you can look into more specialized builds. As I said, I'm not trying to offer like a specific build here. Just more some general advice to get you started to understand how some things work. And from there on, you can then go through the internet. There are tons of builds out there. See what other people are doing with their ships and maybe come out with your own build. Now, the slots that I haven't talked about yet is, well, hangar bay. Some ships have a hangar bay, and those ships usually come with certain pets. You can actually, since I'm here at the ship requisition window, you can buy starship equipment here, and as you can see, there is the hangar, so you can buy certain hangar pets for credits, like blue ones. Some of those hangar pets have certain requisitions to unlock them, like you need to own a certain ship to unlock the pet, but there will always some pets available here. There are better pets from the Dilithium store and so on, but you know, if you are just new, those will do fine in case your ship does have a hangar bay. You can also see you can buy other things here, and you can buy gear up to Mark 9, which, you know, isn't the greatest, but like while you are leveling, there are a lot of loot drops that you can just equip, and there are mission rewards. You can replay missions, so if there is a mission that offers you like a shield or a certain weapon that you want, you could also replay that mission to get that reward again. There are some unique rewards that you can only get once from a mission, but every like normal shield or a phaser array or whatever, you can just replay the mission and get more of those. Now, the other gear here is, of course, your deflector, impulse engine, your warp core, and your shields. Now, those are often filled with like set gear, and as you can see here, I have 3 pieces of the this is the Discovery Reputation set. Once again, once you're into a maximum level, you can then start your reputations and you can unlock gear from that. Until then, there are certain missions that provide reasonable set gear. So there is, I think there was like a Bajoran defense set or something from, I think it was the Herc Arc or something like that. But you can also use the wiki. The Star Trek Online wiki is a very nice place to find certain things. As you are leveling, you don't need a set, right? You just can slot in there whatever drops. Those are not the most important parts while leveling. And then once you're maximum level and you want to do some queues and so on, you might want to look into getting a cheap set from any of those repeatable missions until you get reputation gear. Oh, by the way, this vendor also sells starship weapons. So, well, it's the Federation vendor, so it basically, it's this vendor sells like phaser weapons, and they don't even sell cannons here. It looks like just beams and torpedoes. But you know, that's you can find cheap gear in the exchange. So, or you can just collect enough from drops and reputational rewards, and a new ship comes with certain weapon. Like the new ship's weapon layouts are always a bit awkward, so you might want to change that. But you should be able to like stick to one damage type and maybe get some cheap consoles there as well. Which, you know, also brings us to the R&D system. If I manage to find it here, right? So you can always just craft some things. I mean, I can generally recommend picking some R&D schools that resonate with you and just run the experience project, right? There is, at the bottom here, there is an experience project. And you can just run up to 3 of those simultaneously if you have enough crafting slots. And like just crafting yourself some cheap weapons can also be a way to get weapons. But the exchange probably has some cheap stuff, and as I said, drops and mission rewards will get you through a leveling process fairly easily. Now, where I've arrived here is the bridge officer training. Because now we have to talk about skills. So your ship has stations, right? If you're here in your menu, you can see, I mean, you can also switch to a small craft, which is less exciting, but your starship has certain bridge officer stations depending on your ship. There are engineering, science and tactical stations, and some of them have a secondary specialization, like here you can see like some temporal operative or intelligence. Those are more like what's happening at higher level. For a start, you'll probably only have the basics like engineering, science and tactical. Now here you can select a bridge officer, and each bridge officer has certain abilities. But those bridge officers can learn additional abilities, right? So you have... who do I have here? Right, so here for example I have this bridge officer slotted who is named Kamata Kax. And when we go to skills and we select our bridge officer, we can see the default space and ground skills, right? But as you can see, he, for example, doesn't have beamfire at will 1. He only has a tactical team here and high yield torpedo. If I wanted to learn this bridge officer beamfire at will 1, here at this merchant, you can go to the store, and then you can see tactical space, and then you could buy the beamfire at will training manual, which is really cheap. And then you can see I can learn my bridge officer beamfire at will 1, and now he has that skill. Now when you go to stations, here you can select all the abilities that he has learned, and you can select which one you want equipped. So as I've said, because this ship uses beams, I have a beamfire at will 3 here, I have a torpedo spread 2 here, and I have a tactical team here. And then here on another tactical officer, I have a chemosite laced weaponry. This is a special skill that comes from a logbox. You can buy that in the exchange, you don't have to worry about them. The basic skills will be more than enough. Now, beamfire at will 3 is a special one because, as you can see here in a merchant, you cannot buy that. This is a skill that you either have to craft or buy from the exchange from other people. You can get by just fine, I should say, without having any skills that you need to buy somewhere. Like, just this merchant will absolutely get you to maximum level, and it allows you to try out some skills, right? If you're unsure if you want like beamfire at will or beam overload, you can most certainly just buy yourself some skills here, learn it to an officer, and then just go into space, shoot some ships and see if you like them or not. So I do encourage you to not just watch build videos, but try out some of those skills for yourself if you think one sounds interesting. As you can see, they are not very expensive energy credits wise, or you can buy yourself a bunch of those manuals, train your officers, and then see how they go. By the way, I mean, this video is focused on space, but you can also see here your standard away team. You can select here which bridge officers you want accompanying you on your missions, and just like with space, you can like train them in skills and select the skills they should have. Now, another part that I should mention is that the bridge officers themselves, they have a rank. Like this bridge officer is a commander. This is also a commander. This bridge officer is only a cadet. So if I go to skills here, right, I could not actually learn him skills because you can see, well, one, I don't have a training manual in my inventory, but you can see here it says requires lieutenant, right? So if I wanted to learn this bridge officer a lieutenant level skill, I'd have to promote him. So you can promote here, and this costs you expertise, and then you can promote him. And now he could learn lieutenant level skills. Now I still have to buy the skill manual, but if I wanted to learn him, I don't know. We could buy like scramble senses here, and then you can see I now have the manual in my inventory and I can learn this bridge officer scramble senses, right? So this is how you train your officers in new skills, and this is how you equip them here. Now there are certain bridge officer powers that have shared cooldowns, in a sense. So, for example, emergency power to weapons and emergency power to shields. Emergency power abilities are an interesting thing because you can technically rotate between two and have both effects constantly going. But if you use emergency power to weapons free, it will put emergency power to shields on a 15-second cooldown. And if you have enough cooldown reduction, you can just chain both of those skills indefinitely and have them active at all the time. So I suppose this is a bit more advanced stuff, but be aware of that. If you press like an ability and another one also goes on cooldown, that is just the shared cooldown mechanic there. Also, keep in mind that if you have something like 2 copies of Tactical Team 1, that if you press Tactical Team, the other copy of Tactical Team will also be on a cooldown, but on a shorter one, right? Because the cooldown of this is 30 seconds, but sort of the shared cooldown is 15 seconds. So you can have twice the uptime by running an ability twice. But usually you just want to manage this with cooldown reduction. This is also more of, I guess, an endgame or maybe more of an advanced thing. But just be aware that if you don't have anything that reduces cooldowns, running 2 copies of the same skill might be interesting. So you could be running 2 copies of Beam Forward Will, or you could actually be running 1 copy of Beam Overload and 1 copy of Beam Fight Will and alternate between those 2 skills. That would work. For a low-level build, as I said, then in higher levels, you might want to specialize on something, especially since there are also traits that might improve Beam Forward Will. So it's a bit unusual to mix those in the end game, but as I said, as you are leveling, just have fun, try out some skills, and now you know how to equip them. Which, of course, brings me to another important point. How do you actually get bridge officers? Now, as you level, they will join you automatically through the story, so you will get bridge officer candidates from just story missions. There are some special bridge officers that you can buy from the Zen store, or there are some that you can buy like from fleet holdings. There are also some that you can just buy right here, technically. So you could requisition officers here, and there you have a store, and there you can just get certain bridge officers. As you can see, there are some special officers that you get from the engineering. I'm not actually sure where that was from. Could have been from an event or something, but there are some Zen store officers, right? Those is things that you can buy. There are some, as I said, from like events or from completing, I think those could be from completing like a Delta recruit or maybe a temporary recruit or whatever. Not really that important, I suppose, but you can just buy regular bridge officers here. They are not very good though. They're not very good in a sense that they don't really have any special traits. Which brings me to one part about bridge officers, that is the traits. If I go back to that Jem'Hadar, for example, this is a Jem'Hadar Vanguard, and one of his traits is Engineered Soldier Space, meaning he buffs the performance of my ship. It's obviously ideal if you have bridge officers that buff your space stats. But it's not like really necessary, let's be honest. A lot of people will recommend, especially for more high-end builds, to slot only bridge officers with good space traits, and you can get them from like the fleet holding. There are some that you can get from lockboxes. This, for example, is a bridge officer you could get from the exchange who has Superior Watcher, which gives you space crit chance. So if you have the resources, there are most certainly better bridge officers to get, but if you just need somebody to fill a station, then you can make do with whatever you have here. And if you're also in this window, right, you have your bridge officer candidates down here, right? The bridge officers you have commissioned will be in this list, and you can see stats, you can equip them with ground gear and so on, you can train them in skills, but you have a pool of bridge officers you haven't commissioned. Like, if you got the bridge officer from a reward and maybe you didn't have space, so you didn't press the join button, then they are here, right? So as you can see here, I have 12 bridge officer candidates. You can also, by the way, turn those bridge officers into manuals. So each bridge officer has some basic skills already. For example, this Klingon science officer has Tychon's Rift 3. So I could press create manual, and then I could select Tychon's Rift 3, and then I could choose this manual. This would destroy this bridge officer. Well, kill him, I suppose. Doesn't sound very nice, but it would be gone, right? That bridge officer would be gone, and instead you would have a training manual that you could use to train another officer. That's also a way to get certain skills that you can't easily buy, like for example the fire at will 3. Instead of crafting that skill yourself, if you had an officer that has this ability, you could turn this officer into a training manual instead. But yeah, here you can see the bridge officers that you haven't commissioned yet. There is, I don't know how many you can have in this pool. There is, I think, a limit. But if you got the bridge officer maybe as a reward and you are uncertain where they have gone because you didn't commission them yet, this is where you find them. This is uncommissioned bridge officers, and there you have your commissioned ones. And of course you can, with career options, you can discharge them. This permanently gets rid of an officer, but if you have some officers that you no longer need, then you can discharge them here, and then you get a free slot again, and you can replace them with a different officer if you want to. Okay, I think this covers essentially the basics. Now, I haven't really gone over all the skills that are out there and that you can use, and this could be a much longer video if I included all that, but I just wanted to help some new players find a way around your basic ship loadout, how to set up some bridge officers, how to train them in skills, and maybe give them a little bit of insight on how to put some reasonable weapons on your ship. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this and found this helpful. And of course, if you have played this game for a while, you already knew all of this. This was not an in-depth guide, but just something friendly to new players. So yeah, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.